Anna stood in front of the bedroom mirror, smoothing down the fabric of her light blue dress. She had chosen it carefully, wanting to look perfect for the first day of her honeymoon. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. Wedding preparations, last-minute details, and the overwhelming excitement of marrying the man she loved. And now, finally, the moment had come. In just a few hours, she and Mark would be heading off on their honeymoon, a much-needed escape after months of planning and stress. Mark entered the room, already dressed in his usual business-casual style. Dark slacks, a crisp white shirt, and the expensive watch she had given him as an engagement gift. His dark hair was still damp from the shower, and he smelled of the cologne she had come to associate with comfort and familiarity. He smiled at her in the mirror as he adjusted his cufflinks. "You look beautiful," he said, stepping forward to kiss her shoulder. Anna turned to face him, looping her arms around his neck. "I can't believe we're finally going on our honeymoon," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "I've been looking forward to this for so long, just the two of us. No more wedding stress, no more planning, just pure relaxation." Mark hesitated, just for a second. It was barely noticeable, but Anna caught it. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it again, reaching into his pocket instead. He pulled out a small envelope and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, taking it with a curious look. "Your ticket," he said, watching her face closely. Anna frowned slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside was a train ticket. First class, departing in just a couple of hours. Her fingers tightened around the paper as she looked up at him. "A train ticket?" she asked, confusion creeping into her voice. "I thought we were flying together." Mark exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "We were supposed to," he admitted, "but something urgent came up with work. I have to take a different flight. Just for today. I'll be there before you even arrive at the resort, I promise." Anna felt a strange, sudden unease. "But why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. He gave her an apologetic smile. "I didn't want to stress you out. It's nothing major. Just a quick meeting I couldn't reschedule. I figured this would be a nice experience for you anyway. You love trains, remember? You're always saying how relaxing they are. This way you get to enjoy the scenery, have some time to yourself, and I'll be waiting for you when you get there." Anna stared at him, trying to process the unexpected change of plans. It wasn't that she disliked train travel, she actually did enjoy it, but something about this felt wrong. They had planned this honeymoon together for months, booked everything together. Why would he suddenly change their arrangements without discussing it with her first? "Mark, are you sure this isn't something else?" she asked carefully. "I mean, you could have told me about the work thing earlier. I would have understood." "Of course I'm sure," he said quickly. "It's just one of those last-minute things. I didn't want it to ruin the excitement of today. Please, Anna, don't let this upset you. Everything is still perfect. We're still going on our honeymoon. I just have to take a slight detour, that's all." Anna hesitated. She wanted to believe him. She did believe him. This was Mark, the man she had just vowed to spend the rest of her life with. There was no reason to doubt him. If he said it was just work, then it was just work. She sighed and forced a smile. "Okay," she said, slipping the ticket back into the envelope. "I just wish I had known earlier." He kissed her forehead. "I know, but trust me, it'll be fine. You'll love the train ride, and I'll see you at the resort before you know it." A short while later, they were in a taxi, heading toward the train station. The city passed by in a blur outside the window, but Anna barely noticed. She kept glancing at Mark, who was staring at his phone, typing quickly. "Who are you texting?" she asked, half joking. "Work," he replied without looking up. She nodded, forcing herself to brush away the nagging feeling inside her. She was being silly. Mark had never given her a reason to doubt him before. The taxi pulled up to the station and Mark helped her with her suitcase. He kissed her deeply before she boarded. "I love you," he said. "I'll see you soon." Anna held on to that as she found her seat, watching him disappear into the crowd outside. Anna settled into her seat by the window, adjusting her bag beside her. The train compartment was clean and modern, the soft hum of conversation and the gentle movements of passengers finding their places filling the air. She exhaled slowly, trying to shake off the strange feeling that had been lingering since Mark handed her the ticket. The train station outside was busy, people rushing in different directions, some with luggage in tow, others hurrying to meet loved ones. As the train's departure time neared, a conductor walked down the aisle checking tickets. Anna handed him hers with a polite smile, and he nodded before moving on. She glanced at her phone, half expecting a text from Mark, but there was nothing. She tried to tell herself it was fine, he was likely busy, perhaps already at the airport going through security. Still, she had expected at least a quick message, maybe something reassuring like, "See you soon, love," or "Have a great trip." Instead, there was silence. As the train began to move, Anna shifted her focus outside, watching the city blur past. It was strange to be traveling alone on what was supposed to be their honeymoon. The original plan had been simple. They would fly together, check into the resort together, and finally unwind after the hectic wedding preparations. Instead, she was here, on a train, heading toward the same destination, but taking the long route. She pulled out her phone again, staring at the screen. A part of her wanted to text Mark first, but she hesitated. Maybe she was being overly sensitive. He had promised to be there before she arrived. If she started acting suspicious over something as small as a change in travel plans, wasn't that unfair to him? Shaking off the thought, she decided to distract herself. She pulled a book from her bag, a novel she had brought for the trip, and tried to focus on the words. But after reading the same paragraph 3 times without absorbing anything, she gave up and placed it on the empty seat beside her. The train continued its journey, gradually leaving the city behind. The urban landscape shifted to open fields and rolling hills, the sky stretching wide above them. Anna took a deep breath, trying to appreciate the scenery. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe this train ride was a good opportunity to slow down, to enjoy the journey instead of rushing straight to the destination. Still, the feeling in her gut refused to disappear. A couple of hours passed. The train made occasional stops at small towns, allowing new passengers to board while others disembarked. Anna checked her phone again, still nothing from Mark. She bit her lip, debating whether she should send him a message. Finally, she typed, "Hey, just checking in. Hope everything's going well. Let me know when you land." She hesitated for a second before hitting send. The message went through, and she watched the screen, waiting for the familiar read receipt or the 3 dots indicating he was typing. But nothing happened. Maybe he was still on the plane. Or maybe he was in a rush at the airport. There were plenty of logical explanations. Still, she couldn't shake the thought, why does this feel wrong? As the train approached its next stop, Anna decided to stretch her legs. She made her way to the small cafe car a few compartments away, ordering a cup of tea. The warm ceramic cup in her hands was comforting, but her mind remained restless. That was when she overheard it. 2 women were seated at a nearby table, engaged in casual conversation. Anna hadn't been paying attention until she heard Mark's name. At first, she thought she had imagined it, but then one of the women laughed lightly and said it again. "Yeah, Mark is meeting me at the airport. He booked everything for us. Honestly, I still can't believe it." Anna's grip tightened around her cup. "Wait, Mark?" the other woman asked. "You mean your Mark?" A playful chuckle. "Yes, my Mark. God, I don't know how he managed to pull this off. He said he needed to be discreet about it, which I guess makes sense, but I just can't wait." The words hit Anna like a physical force. She turned slightly, careful not to make it obvious that she was listening. The woman speaking had long, dark hair and an expensive-looking coat draped over her chair. She was casually sipping a coffee, oblivious to the storm brewing inside Anna. This is a mistake. It has to be a mistake. She strained to hear more. "So, where exactly are you 2 going? the second woman asked. The dark-haired woman leaned in slightly as if sharing a secret. "Paris," she said, her voice laced with excitement. "He booked us a week there. Said he wanted to make it extra special." Anna felt her stomach drop. Paris? That wasn't where she and Mark were supposed to be going. Their honeymoon was planned for a tropical resort, nowhere near France. Her heart pounded in her chest, blood rushing to her ears. No, this has to be some kind of misunderstanding. It's a different Mark, it has to be. But, deep down, she already knew. Mark hadn't booked a separate flight because of a work emergency. He wasn't planning to meet her at the resort. He had given her a train ticket, sent her off alone, while he flew somewhere else, with another woman. Anna's hands shook as she placed the cup down. Her mind was racing, trying to grasp onto anything that made sense. Was this planned all along? Had he ever intended to go on their honeymoon, or had he set this up from the start? She sat frozen for what felt like an eternity, her thoughts spiraling. Her wedding ring felt heavier than before, pressing against her skin like a cruel reminder. The woman kept talking, unaware that her words were shattering Anna's world. "I can't wait to finally be there with him. No more sneaking around, just us." Anna swallowed hard. She had two choices. She could sit there, pretend she hadn't heard a thing, let this trip play out like nothing had changed, or she could do something about it. Her fingers tightened around her phone. She took a deep breath and made her decision. Anna sat frozen in her seat, her hands gripping the edge of the small cafe table as the conversation continued behind her. The voices of the two women seemed distant now, muffled by the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The world around her blurred, the steady motion of the train, the murmur of other passengers, the clinking of coffee cups. It all faded into the background. She needed to breathe. Slowly, she forced herself to take a sip of her now cooling tea, her fingers trembling against the ceramic. Her mind raced, trying to process what she had just heard. Paris? A secret trip? Mark booked everything? There was no denying it now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't paranoia. Mark had lied to her, and not just a small lie. This was something carefully planned, something deliberate. Her stomach twisted. How long had this been going on? Had he been cheating on her for months? Years? Or had this started after the wedding? No, that didn't make sense. He had planned this trip, booked flights, reserved hotels. You don't do something like that on impulse. Anna's hands clenched into fists. How could she have been so blind? She thought about their wedding day. Just a week ago, standing before their friends and family, exchanging vows. Had he been lying even then? Looking into her eyes, promising to love her, while already making arrangements for someone else? She swallowed hard, forcing down the lump in her throat. She couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Instead, she reached for her phone, her fingers moving automatically as she checked for messages. Nothing. No missed calls, no texts from Mark. It had been hours since she last heard from him. Her chest tightened. She needed to know. Needed confirmation. With shaky fingers, she tapped on their shared airline booking, the one they had made months ago for their honeymoon. It should have shown both of their names, both of their flights. Instead, it showed only hers. Mark had canceled his ticket. A cold numbness spread through her. He had never intended to meet her at the resort. He had made sure she was traveling separately, sent her away on a train while he took a flight in the opposite direction. He had planned to disappear. A mix of emotions surged inside her. Anger, humiliation, heartbreak. But underneath it all was something else, something sharper. Determination. She wasn't going to just sit here and let him get away with it. Without thinking, she stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her tea. The two women at the nearby table glanced at her, but she ignored them, turning on her heel and heading back toward her seat. She needed space, needed to think. As she walked down the aisle, she felt the weight of reality settling over her. What was she supposed to do now? Should she confront him? Demand an explanation? Or should she disappear, walk away before he even knew she had found out? No, she couldn't let him control the narrative. He had already taken so much from her. Their honeymoon, their trust, their marriage. She wouldn't let him take her dignity, too. Sliding into her seat, she pulled out her phone and, with steady fingers, typed a message. Anna. Hey, just landed at the resort. Everything's beautiful. Can't wait to see you. Let me know when you arrive. Love you. She stared at the words, her heart pounding. It felt surreal, sending something so normal when she knew the truth. But she needed him to believe she was still clueless. Seconds later, the message marked as read. Her stomach twisted. He was online. He was active. Then 3 dots appeared. He was typing. She held her breath. Mark, that's great, babe. My flight got delayed, but I should be there soon. Can't wait to see you. Anna let out a slow breath, her hands tightening around the phone. He was still lying. Even now, he was feeding her excuses, keeping up the act. Her anger burned hotter. Fine. If he wanted to lie, she would play along. For now. But she wasn't going to sit around waiting. She was going to find out exactly what he was doing. She opened her laptop, her fingers moving quickly as she began searching for flights. If Mark was flying somewhere else, to Paris, then his name would be on a flight manifest. All she had to do was find it. It took her 15 minutes. There it was. A flight departing earlier that afternoon, heading straight to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Under passenger names, she saw it. Mark Whitmore. Her breath caught. And next to his name, another passenger. A woman. Anna stared at the screen, her mind reeling. This wasn't just a last-minute fling. He had booked a flight with her. That meant hotels, dinner reservations, a whole plan. Her hands shook as she clicked through more details, searching for anything else. Then another discovery. A hotel confirmation under his email. A luxury boutique hotel in the heart of Paris, booked for 2 guests. Anna sat back, pressing her palm against her forehead. This was real. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay calm. She had 2 choices: let this break her or take control. She chose the second. Without hesitation, she booked a flight. Not to their honeymoon destination, not to some quiet retreat where she could lick her wounds. She booked a ticket to Paris. If Mark wanted to play games, she would make sure he never forgot the day he tried to deceive her. Anna stepped off the plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport, the weight of exhaustion and adrenaline pressing down on her. The overhead announcement buzzed in the background, but she barely heard it. Her heart was pounding, her fingers gripping the strap of her carry-on bag as she walked through the terminal, her mind racing with what she was about to do. She had spent the entire flight trying to figure out how she wanted this to end. Would she confront Mark in public, exposing him for the liar he was? Would she check into his hotel first, waiting for him in the lobby like a storm on the horizon? Or would she walk away before he even knew she had discovered his betrayal? No, she had come this far. She wasn't leaving without answers, without closure. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out her phone. No new messages from Mark. He still thought she was sitting at a beachside resort, sipping a cocktail, waiting for him to arrive. She smirked bitterly. Let him think that. Anna had already mapped out where she needed to go. The boutique hotel he had booked was a short drive from the airport, nestled in a quiet Parisian street near the Seine. She stepped into a taxi, her fingers tightening around her phone as the city blurred past the window. She wasn't sure what she expected to feel, seeing Paris like this. It was supposed to be a city of love, a place where couples walked hand in hand, lost in their own world. Instead, it felt surreal, like she was moving through a dream that had soured into a nightmare. When the taxi pulled up in front of the hotel, Anna hesitated for the first time. Her reflection stared back at her in the car window. Tired eyes, tense shoulders, lips pressed into a hard line. She had never imagined herself in a situation like this, but she wasn't backing down. Stepping out of the car, she adjusted her bag and walked through the glass doors. The lobby was sleek, dimly lit with warm golden lights. A concierge greeted her with a polite smile, but she barely acknowledged him. Her eyes swept the room, scanning for them. Then she saw him. Mark was standing near the reception desk, looking effortlessly put together in a crisp button-down and dark slacks. And next to him, laughing at something he said, was her. The woman from the train. Anna's pulse roared in her ears. For a moment she just watched them, a strange sense of detachment washing over her. They looked like any other couple checking into a hotel for a romantic getaway. Comfortable, at ease. Mark had one hand resting on his suitcase, the other slipping into his pocket as he leaned toward the woman slightly, speaking in that smooth, confident way he always did. And then, as if sensing her presence, he turned his head. Their eyes met. For a split second, Anna saw it. Confusion. Panic. The way his face drained of color. Then she smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that had none of the warmth he was used to. Mark took an instinctive step back, his lips parting as if he was about to say something, but no words came out. The woman beside him frowned, following his gaze until her eyes landed on Anna. Anna took her time walking toward them, each step measured, controlled. She didn't look away, didn't break eye contact with Mark for even a second. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her voice calm, almost pleasant. "Funny running into you here." The woman glanced between them, confusion clear on her face. "Mark, who is this?" Anna tilted her head, pretending to look thoughtful. "Oh, he didn't tell you?" She turned to the woman, offering her hand. "I'm Anna, his wife." The word landed like a gunshot. Mark visibly flinched. The woman's face paled. "What?" she whispered. Anna arched an eyebrow. "He didn't mention that part?" She let out a soft, almost amused laugh. "God, that's embarrassing. You'd think he would have at least told you he was married before flying you to Paris." The woman took a step away from Mark, as if he had just become something diseased. "Tell me she's lying," she demanded, her voice shaking. Mark finally snapped out of his stunned silence. This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, really?" Anna cut in, folding her arms. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what it is." The woman let out a sharp, angry breath and turned on Mark. "You told me you were divorced." Anna let out a mocking laugh. "Divorced? Oh, honey, we've been married for less than 2 weeks." The woman looked like she might be sick. She took another step back, shaking her head. "You're disgusting," she spat at Mark, before grabbing her bag and storming toward the exit. Mark barely seemed to notice. His eyes were locked on Anna, his expression shifting between fear and anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed under his breath, his voice low. Anna leaned in slightly, her smile never fading. "Catching you in the act." Mark glanced around, as if realizing people were starting to stare. He reached for her wrist, but she pulled away before he could touch her. "Anna, listen." "No," she interrupted, her voice sharp now. "You listen. You lied. You planned this. You married me while booking a trip for your mistress. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Mark's jaw tightened. "I was going to end things with her." Anna let out a hollow laugh. "Oh, were you? Before or after your week-long romantic getaway?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." Mark frowned. "What does that mean?" She pulled something from her bag. A neatly folded envelope. She pressed it against his chest before stepping back. "It means you should probably find a good lawyer." He unfolded it, scanning the papers quickly. His face twisted. "You already filed for divorce?" Anna shrugged. "Turns out you can do a lot in a few hours when you're motivated." She smiled sweetly. "Enjoy your trip, Mark." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked out of the hotel, leaving him standing there, alone. The cold Parisian air hit her as she stepped outside, but for the first time in hours, she felt like she could breathe. She didn't know exactly what came next, but one thing was certain. She was done with Mark. And for the first time in a long time, she was finally in control of her own story.